hopefully you can hear, everybody can hear us online. I'm going to pick a victim. Aaron Beaver, could you just say something? Aaron, we'll just check we can hear you in the chamber.
All loud and clear, thank you.
Turn him up a bit. Just say something again, Aaron, will you? Yeah. Please.
How's that? Not shouting at you like last time?
Just give us a sec. You're a bit quiet, Aaron. Last week you were really loud.
I've always been quiet.
It wasn't a comment on your personality, it was.
How's that?
Andrew Daniels, can you say something? I want to work our way around the room.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
He's a bit better, but he's not great, is he? Are we on the full volume? Right, okay. I think people at home will have to shout if they're asking something or speak loudly if that's okay, because you're a bit quiet, but don't worry about it. We've got the windows open because it's a warm evening. Okay, first item is apologies for absence. I've got none.
I've got none, Chair.
Okay, good stuff. We have a Councillor Murray's missing. Any idea where she might be? Not that you're her keeper. No? We'll see where she is. Oh, she did say she was going to be late. Sorry, I remembered the other day. She was something at school, so she's going to be late. She's going to get here. But so I did say I'd move her items to the end of the agenda, so if there's anything, we'll leave them to the end of the agenda if that's okay. Sorry, I forgot. That slipped my mind. The next item is minutes of the meeting from the 24th of February. Any matters arising anybody's got? No? I'll propose those as a true record. Could somebody second that, please? All those in favour, Cabinet members, please show. Great, that's accepted.
Councillor Murray's got nothing on the agenda, so you're all right.
Councillor Murray's got nothing on the agenda. Better still. Doesn't know why she was coming in. Next item is declarations of interests. Any declarations of interests? No. Public questions? Nina?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. So the first one is my item, which is item 4, which is the equality framework, pages 15 through to 34. As the report outlines, we obviously have an existing equality framework that was last refreshed in June 2016. It obviously requires a refresh. We have to meet our statutory duties as under the Equality Act 2010, as it spells out in the recommendation in Clause A. Development of shared services has had an impact on that equality framework as well, because obviously we do things in a slightly different manner than we did in 2016. And certainly, as an administration, we want to strengthen and we want to improve our equality and framework and our general approach to equalities and equal opportunities, etc. So the document is there to be perused by members. I think most people have had sight of it previously, probably had sight of it as it's been going through, because I think this has been discussed quite widely, and therefore the recommendations are as laid out that we adopt the equality framework as it's drafted. Has anybody got any questions, comments, points they'd like to make? Alan Collins.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. It's just a wider question with the equality framework, and that's in the link into the procurement strategy. And just wondering, you know, because a lot of councils now are using to ourselves a scoring system. What will be the impact of this on any scoring system?
That covers a couple of different, because it covers a little bit the procurement stuff, which is on Peter. So go on, Chris, you out down that one.
It probably wouldn't directly in the equality framework. What should happen when we do any new service, new policy, new strategy, which often then leads to procurements, is an impact assessment should be undertaken, so that should consider it. The element I suspect you might be referring to, Councillor Collins, is around social value and understanding that. I think around about 12 months ago, it might be less, the council brought in the social value portal, which is used for certain procurements, and what that has is various measures, themes and measures to assess bids and score bids, and there's a whole selection of them. Some of those are related to societal things which would probably fit into the equality framework. So this framework, not directly, but we have other things in place to cover it.
Yeah, very much referring around when we have a framework, other organisations that when we go out to procurement have to have similar frameworks, you know, and is that something we would consider as part of any procurement?
Do you want to answer?
I think the answer is probably yes, we would. It depends on different types of procurement. So yes, I think we do, and that's why it should get picked up in the impact assessment when we're determining a piece of work. So that we should be highlighting and saying, are there opportunities for us to try to meet our public sector equality duty, or risks if we do something in a particular way that we will fail that duty?
And that's the point to me of an impact assessment, because it's the appreciation of that on the specific item. I'm trying to think of some of the procurements we will do. Things like playgrounds and equipment and stuff like that is one that would be, whereas some of them wouldn't be relevant, would they? Gary, do you want to come in?
Sorry, I'm just trying to interpret what Alan's trying to get to. And no, I'll suggest something, and this, you tell me if I'm wrong. So I think this is about dealing with companies who maybe should have an equality policy. So as part of our due diligence, do we check that they have those policies in place?
And sorry, just to add, the answer is yes. And so, for example, in our major projects, like things like waste and things, they have to provide us either their version that we're happy with or make use of ours.
But I suspect that if we're just buying widgets, that's harder to do. Yeah, because it's not appropriate. That's what I was getting at. Okay, got there. Any other questions on that framework? No, in that case then, the proposal from myself is that we endorse the recommendations in paragraph 3, subsections A, B and C. Can somebody second that, please? Yeah. And all those in favour, please show. Great, that's that done. Thank you. The next item is item 5, which is Peter, and it's the revenue budget outturn.
Thanks, Chair. In the interest of getting you away for dancing later, I shall be as brief as possible. It says actually, obviously, the recommendations are quite simple in this report. We're to note the underspend of £224,000, and that is then split. The money split from that underspend, as you can see there in item 5, is to approve an additional £150,000 for planning appeals. I think we had a decision at the last planning meeting in relation to an application in Charlotte Richard, which will no doubt go to appeal. Could involve costs. No doubt will be further such potential applications in the future. So we need to make sure we have some resilience there in terms of being able to defend also to incur the cost of those appeals. And then the rest, Chair, is to go into general balances. So that also makes sure that we continue to comply with our commitment to balances of at least £4 million. So that'll take the overall level to just 4.1 in our general balances. In terms of the underspend that I made reference to, in terms of the general performance of each directorate, you can see there pages 37, 38 and 39 gives a breakdown of not just the figures, but obviously as to why those underspends or overspends have occurred. Probably in the main, if I could just generalise very briefly, the underspends mainly perhaps in where we haven't filled staff vacancies, and perhaps the most significant overspend overall is the staff award, the pay rise that of course previously hadn't been in the budget, but it has gone through. So that's making it a very simple overview, Chair, but I'll stop there for comments or questions.
Is it implied criticism of the plan?
Not implied at all, not implied. They are there to make their decision based on what they think's right or wrong.
Councillor Sam Chapman.
Hi, Chair. Thank you. Thank you. I notice on page 38, at the bottom of paragraph 16, the last bullet point refers to a 42k overspend relating to the cost of Gypsy Roma traveller encampments, resulting in court attendance and bailiff. I'd be grateful if one of the executive members could unpack that a little for us, tell us what that was about. I'm particularly interested to see if that was expenditure on the incident at the halfway house. I think it's quite important that people understand how much dealing with these incidents costs the council.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Chapman. I agree with your last statement there, Councillor Chapman, is that people hopefully will understand or appreciate how much it costs each time we have a gypsy traveller encampment. You know, so it might be on one of the car parks, it might be on another parcel of land that we own, and even if they're only there for one night, that involves a cost, it involves officer time. You've also then got to clean up some of the mess sometimes, particularly when they've been there longer than perhaps one night as well. So it is a continual problem. It's particularly a problem on our car parks. So we have looked and discussed the idea of barriers and other such issues. That comes with other restrictions and problems. So it's and obviously an upfront cost rather than an ongoing cost. So all I can say, Councillor Chapman, is that I agree with you entirely. Why is it happening? Because we're having so many in short. That leads to another debate about what you do about the continual movement of travellers through the area. But I agree. I think perhaps the solution to it, and again, it's just although I think it needs to be discussed in more detail, but the solution perhaps is multifaceted. Perhaps we need do more to protect our actual spaces if we can. Perhaps we do need to look at how we can work with other partners to make sure that there's some sort of movement of these of travellers, or even locations where that are more suitable to stop in. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to come up with solutions tonight, but that's the reason why there's an overspend there.
Okay with that, Councillor Chapman?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions on or comments? Councillor John Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was going to ask Councillor Murray a question, but she's not here.
Feel free. We'll do our best impression. We'll try. I'll assume
it's just on the page 14 about the leisure centre. I just interested to know how things now, COVID restrictions have been fully restricted, how the leisure centres are getting on since the restrictions were lifted.
Chris can probably answer you better than I can.
All right.
I'll also look towards the back in case I start getting things wrong from Mark. The reality is that actually we've still not managed to be operating for 12 months properly since COVID, which means that we're still learning about actually what is the base cost and income coming in for the to the centres. They're doing fairly well, so they're doing as well as we budgeted and expected them to. That still needs to do some recovery back to the pre-COVID days, because obviously a lot of people had their memberships lapse and decided they weren't going to continue to do that. And there'll be proposals that are going to come forward in the coming months around changes that we might make to the centres to improve and encourage people to make greater use of them.
Okay, thank you.
So generally recovering well, but patchy on different things in different places, and the world's a different place, I think, is the best way of saying that. Any other questions or comments on that report? No, in which case then the recommendations are to note the report, to note the environments, and to approve an increase in the planning appeals reserve of 150k, which Peter proposed. Seconded by Adrian. All those in favour, please show. Good stuff, thank you. Right, the next item then is the capital outturn numbers. Peter, item 6 on the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. Again, quite a relatively short report. We're asking members there in paragraph 2 under the recommendations to approve the revised programme, and that mainly includes 2 elements, which it says there in the bullet points: £46,000 to increase to the health hub at Whittle, and 104,000 the adaptation grants, which reflects the change in the allocation of funds. If we go just scroll down to the report, you can see there just a little bit more detail, page 57, in relation to those items, but plus the revision that's resulted in an increase of just over £3 million in the capital programme since the last time it was reported. So, whoops. So that's in terms of the capital programme. They're the small changes there, Chair. My word, we're all going off. On borrowing investments, you can see there on page 59, it provides us an update there in terms of our borrowing. You can see there what we've got at March 22 of 70 million, or just over 70 million, compared to at March 21 of 62. Overall, of course, as it says in the earlier part of the report, of course, the actual capital programme has actually gone down from about £28 million, what reported back in February, through to where we are now. So not a great deal of change, Chair, but obviously we just need to approve those small revisions.
Okay, any questions or comments on the capital report? Anybody's got? No? On that case, the recommendations included in paragraphs 2, 3 and 4, as Peter's proposed. Seconded. Somebody please second those. Thank you, Alistair. All those in favour, please show. Excellent. Right, that item is approved. And the Peter Wilson Show continues with the next item, which is the Q4 Performance Monitoring Report. Is that correct, Peter?
Yep, thank you, Chair. Pleased just to say that, again, performance is good. I think the report tells us it's 71, yes, 71, my eyes aren't going that bad. 71% of projects are rated as green, and also on the key indicators and performance measures, likewise, we've got a good performance. I think the overall picture here has been one that in the past 12 months or more, when I've been presenting these performance reports, we've had a number of areas perhaps where we've not hit our targets and the indicators slightly off. I think in this report, while the issues are quite common in terms of where we're perhaps missing, in performance is improving. And I think that's partly as we're coming out of the pandemic and the post-pandemic period, also because I think we're taking some actions to actually address the issues as well. So I know that on the actual projects, Chair, the only one that's rated as amber there is Tatton, but we know that that is now, work is progressing there. We know that we're hopefully going to be completed by October. Sorry, Rachel, nearly got you in trouble there. October. Completed by October, and obviously, you know, hopefully we get that obviously occupied, and that'll be a major facility for the East Ward of Chorley as well. In terms of the measures, Chair, the performance indicators, we can see there the digital training, something that we're very keen on, something that we continue to put in the corporate strategy. Still off target, but as I said, hopefully now we'll see a significant uptake in those courses, and also make sure some of the work we're doing individually with people to support them in their own home as well. Affordable homes, similar picture. It's improving. It's not good enough. We're going to come back to this as a separate item, I know, in future in terms of what we do about affordable housing, but it's getting better than where we were. And again, I'd apply the same logic, as it were, perhaps to the business rate base, to the town centre vacancy. They are off target, but those performances, given what we've been through, are still quite strong, and we are taking action to address them. So that's the general flavour of the report, Chair, but again, happy to discuss anything in further detail.
Okay, thank you. And just, yeah, I think the common denominator on a lot of these where we're struggling a little bit is the post-COVID lag, and we are getting back to something like normal, to quote Councillor Walker's earlier comments. We're getting back towards a normal world, and hopefully that remains for the rest of this year at least. So, any questions on the performance monitoring report? Councillor Sam Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. On page 82, paragraph 40, reference to initial scoping sessions hosted with partners to take forward the development of a data intelligence solution. All about is working together, coordinated working across public services. And note the approval of the equalities framework earlier, and the fact that we continue to include rurality as one of the factors there. I was wondering if the data intelligence solution would allow us in any way to consider how public services are delivered in terms of urban versus rural in terms of one ward versus another. Can we use that to see where we're delivering services and where we're investing our money?
I'm looking to Chris or Asif on this one, I think.
Well, in relation to delivery of service requests in any aspect or any part of the borough, we do capture information in relation to where that service is delivered. So the metadata, geographical metadata, is available within our GI system. So yes, technically speaking, we could report on that. and customer services as well, they contact, yes.
Thank you for that. Only you could put metadata into a response about where we're spending our money. But well done. Councillor Chapman, did you understand the answer, number one? And number two, had you got a comment on that?
It might be much understood the answer, but I have a good idea where he's going on it. I'd be interested to see whether we can, in a joined up way with partners, report on how we're delivering services to different parts of the areas. I suspect that in certain parts of Chorley, we will be delivering services in a different way and possibly to a different level than in others. And it would be useful for the council to measure and to capture that if we are serious about rurality being one of the issues in the equality framework.
Fair comment. We can look to do some things. I think it'd be interesting for us as a council. What I would say is that we basically work the same way in every area. So there should be no differential. The differential will be around need in terms of, for argument's sake, I spend a lot of time at the moment in Clayton, the Woods, Clayton Green. There is an awful lot of grass cutting and maintenance of street scene up there because there's an awful lot of grass and trees, far more than there is in the middle of Chorley. So going back to Asim's earlier comments, I think we collect that. In terms of the customer responsiveness, responding to customers. So if you get more people ringing up in one area, they'll get a better service. I think we could do some mapping on that. And then Asim's indicating he wants to come back in.
Yeah, through the chair, sorry. Yeah, it all depends on what type of data and information we're looking to obtain. So there is health-related information, there is national information in relation to the Borough of Chorley through the ONS data that's captured. There's local information that we capture as part of service delivery. And ultimately, a combination of those data sets can be used to better deliver services, but it all depends on what particular issue we are trying to address as a council. And that would obviously depend on the type of data that's relied upon to inform the delivery of that service, if that makes sense.
So Sam, have you got an idea of what you were after? Is it cost or value of spend in an area, or is it time spent, or is it something else?
I'm interested in how the public services are applying their resources in different areas of Chorley. And as you say, there will be, even a common approach will apply different need in different areas. But I think that the impact of that needs to be recognised and measured. The point you've raised, I will ask you about later on item 9. It'll maybe make more sense.
Fair comment, and we'll leave it there. But yeah, we'll try and do some mapping as best we can. But I think the question is I'm a little bit trying to work out what we're trying to achieve here, because there will be differential spend in differential areas, but it will be different for different. And we just had a discussion at the partnership meeting earlier this afternoon about mapping need with our partners, and all of us respond in different ways to need. So the spend will be different depending on the environment you're in, and the costs of some of that stuff is fairly big and some of it's very small, but it all needs doing, I think, is what we came up with this afternoon. We'll move on from that point, if that's okay, Sam. Yeah. Is there any other questions
Yes.
or comments? Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments around the report, the monitoring report? No, in which case I think we just have to note the report. So that's noted, yeah. I'd be happy with that. Okay, the next item then is Councillor Morwood, which is the allocation of sill for the Wigan playing field.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you'll see in paragraph 2, the recommendation is to approve to amend the infrastructure funding statement and approve the allocation of community infrastructure levy monies of £120,000 for the construction of a sports facility with associated infrastructure at Wigan Lane playing fields. Members may remember that's the to improve the football facilities there, and particularly the Bowman, the Chorley Bowman. The project, you can see there in paragraph 4, the project had been tendered and all the tenders came in over the anticipated budget, and there was a deficit of £170,000. There's a little bit more explanation of that in paragraphs 11 and 13, but basically all the 9 bids, all of them came in over what was expected. This is really basically the sign of the times, and the time it took to go through the process. The costs of materials, of labour, etc. have just skyrocketed, and that's the reason for the request for additional funding. As it says there in number 11, paragraph 11, at the time of the consultation, no open space projects were added to the list, and because we thought we had enough. But as it turns out, we now have to come to you and request additional funding on that SIL statement. The budget, as I say, is the deficit in paragraph 12 there is £170,000. Sports England have very kindly said they would put in an additional 50,000 on top of the 50,000 they had already allocated, and so that leaves us the shortfall of 120,000. Paragraph 17 shows the amount of SIL we have, so we have the money, and we just seek your approval for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morwood. Any questions or comments on that report? And I think, yeah, to echo the sentiments, all construction budgets, particularly for these kind of, which is effectively a smaller works job,
Yes.
are escalating massively, and one wonders where it will stop, but that's a wider issue altogether. Any questions, comments? Can't see any. So the recommendation was paragraph 2. Alistair, anybody wish to second that? Thank you, Adrian. All those in favour, please show. Good stuff. Thank you. That's that item approved. We move on to item 9, which is Councillor Adrian Lowe and the Streetscene Strategy.
Thank you, Chair. To present the Streetscene Strategy for 22 to 25. The strategy builds on the previous strategy from 17 to 20, which focused on improving various priorities and dealing with specific operational challenges. Paragraph 9 of the report actually just highlights a few of the actual target performance indicators. Streetscene represents a large proportion of the council's total revenue budget and staffing, and the strategy is therefore important for ensuring a strategic approach and clear action plan for the development of service delivery. Paragraph 13 of the report summarises the main themes and areas for development within the new strategy, and some of the key themes from paragraph 16 onwards, particularly green operations, biodiversity, neighbourhood improvements, maximising technology, and also people and culture. The strategy is detailed in Appendix A of the report, and accompanying is a very detailed action plan. So the implementation and monitoring of the report would be, in terms of detailed on the action plan. The initial review would be carried out at a 6-month mark to evaluate any key outputs, etc. And then from then onwards, it will be a yearly basis. Comments from the finance officer to say that it's fully expected that the cost involved in the strategy, in delivering the strategy, are contained within existing budgets, and just a gentle reminder that we're dealing with a strategy rather than any parochial issues on specific areas of the street scene service. So with that, Chair, I will move the recommendations that we note the report, and then following initial engagement and feedback from parish councils on the strategy, the approval is delegated to myself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe, and I admire your preemptive strike, although I suspect Councillor Chapman has got his hand up already, so he may come back at you. Councillor Chapman, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. It's a specific example of the more general question that I asked earlier. It's not the entire thing, it's just an example of it. I note in page 109, under the title of neighbourhood improvement, the first words are wildflower planting, and the biodiversity programme has reduced the resources required for scheduled maintenance and grass cutting. And bearing in mind what the leader said about how much more grass we have in Claytonley Woods, the question that comes to mind is, by how much have the resources is required been reduced, and where in particular does that saving fall?
Thank you, Chair. Always happy to provide that level of detail, but if Councillor Chapman would excuse, the answer will be coming outside of this meeting for specifics.
I think it's...
I'm very grateful, Chair, if that detail can be provided. I don't expect him to have it off the cuff, as it were, but it would be very useful to have it.
No, I was just going to say it would take a lot of, in effect, drilling down per ward, because these are in general terms. The logical conclusion of the implementation of wildflower meadows and wildlife corridors would reduce the amount of cutting of grass because of the very nature of the project, but I'm sure a combination of street scene officers and finance bods will actually provide the details on particularly to Clayton.
They're looking quite giddy, you're not in the room, Councillor Chapman, they're looking quite giddy at the thought of doing that, but I would argue that I think wildflower meadows are actually more expensive than mowing, in my experience, and the amount of work to get them dead right is quite hard work. And microphone on, please, I see.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand what the essence of the requirement is, just to capture the information. Clearly, we understand how much linear metres of grass we cut across the borough and what we leave for wildflowers and that kind of. But as the chair quite clearly points out, there is a cost to seeding wildflowers, and that needs to be offset against the savings that's achieved as a result of not cutting grass. But I would say that the council has increased its portfolio of assets across the commercial arm of its day-to-day activity, and some of that increase in maintaining those assets has been factored into the existing budget within this particular service. So as a result of not cutting some areas of grass, some of that resource has been redeployed to maintaining the likes of Primrose Gardens, the digital hub, etc. across the borough.
I suspect you're just making the issue worse there, as I mentioned those particular locations, but anyway, we'll come back to that. Councillor Chapman, were you okay with that, those answers?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll be very grateful to receive that information when it comes. Obviously, there was sufficient reduction in resources for it to be mentioned in this report, and I'd be grateful for those to be specified further.
Okay, that's great. Okay, Councillor Cullens.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Very much welcome the strategy and that it's been out to consultation. But clearly, from the Parish Council's point of view, the timescales were exceedingly tight, and I understand there are still a number of parish councils that have not yet been able to respond. So I'm just wondering if you could just answer how many parishes have responded so far. I understand that they have been given an extension to respond in some instances, and I wonder how that will influence those who are responding, can influence this strategy, which will be accepted tonight.
Thank you, Chair. The precise number of responses I don't have to hand, but if you look at the recommendation 3 of the report, is that if Cabinet approves this strategy, then following consultation, and we appreciate it was a tight timescale, it has been extended, and we take everybody's views into consideration, and it'll come back to me for sign-off. But I'll happily, outside the meeting, Councillor Cullens, provide you with who's responded so far.
Thanks very much on that one. Appreciate that. Really, it's about then those who do respond in the future. If that is going to influence from your sign-off, how will that come back to understand what those comments have been?
Through you, Chair, in terms of it'll be the implementation of the action plan and the review at 6-month level, in terms of incorporating any feedback we've got from parish councils, which would come back in terms of how service delivery, etc., is achieved.
I think I'm advised it'll usually be an AMD decision, so it'll probably be brought back at that point. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you. A question for Councillor Lowe. I'm concerned about the number of weeds that are popping up all on pavements and around lampposts and telegraph poles. Years ago, A member of staff who used to go around the area with a backpack full of weed killer and spray all over the place. Has that now stopped?
Through you, Chair, no, it hasn't stopped, but members will recollect a number of years ago, there was a public question in terms of the council's use of glyphosate, and we took various actions to try and reduce the amount of that in the weed killer treatment. But obviously, on one of the action points there is going to be a review within Q1 of the new year in terms of we're looking at extra trials of other methods to, one, balance the commitment, the environmental commitments that this council has made compared to the reports that come through the service centre for treatment.
So, yeah, that's all very well, but the weeds are growing fairly well at the moment, and it is some parts of the pavements are looking in a bad way really with weeds. When do you hope to start using other materials?
Through you, Chair, I knew that weeds would crop up because it is it's not just solely restricted to the Whittle area. It's right across the borough, and there are a number of factors that could contribute. Primarily, the amount of rainfall, for instance. There is the second point in terms of the most effective treatment, and again, I revert back to this council's commitment to reduce the use of certain weed killers. So we've got to have an environmental head on our shoulders. But in terms of some of the technology that we've used to try and treat weed treatment have been ineffective because it might just for a couple of days sort the initial problem out, but then members will do another service request in to say it's grown again. So, and the continuous amount of service requests that crop up, and it affects all of us, Chair.
Councillor Walker, I take it you're not happy with the answer because you want to return to...
Nothing further to say. I'll wait in eager anticipation of the weeds disappearing.
So, Saturday morning at a Taste of Chorley, I was being harangued by a gentleman about the fact that weeds were a problem, and dandelions in particular. But Saturday afternoon, at the back end of Taste of Chorley, I was being told how great they were for bees. I don't think we can win on this thing. What we're trying is a range, as Councillor Lower said, a range of options. Some please some people, some are pleasing other people. But there is action being taken on weeds, and different actions are being tried out, and it's a watch this space kind of thing. So, again, I think we're aware of certain areas where they are more weed friendly and areas where they're less weed friendly. What I would recommend is members, if you are going towards Devonshire Road, there's a bollard at the end of Devonshire Road, which has, I think, the alternative to Ukrainian wheat growing around it, which I thought was quite, needed sorted out a few weeks ago, but now it's quite impressive for the amount of some kind of wild oats you can get round a bollard in Chorley Town Centre. It is almost rewilding Chorley Town Centre on its own, but have a look when you're driving past, it's quite interesting. We digress. What were we talking about, Adrian? Is it street scene strategy?
It's the very minor issue of adopting and approving the street scene strategy for the next three years.
Matters.
But whether it's weed control or grass cutting, it's always eventful nature for the discussion. But I'm happy to move the recommendations, Chair.
Is there any other comments or questions? No. In that case, anyone wish to second that report, that proposal? Yeah, Peter seconded it. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's passed. Before we move on to exclude the public and press and whilst in the public part of the meeting, I know Councillor Murray's landed, and she will, of course, wish to congratulate her fellow honours winner, gainer, whatever the word is I'm looking for. Councillor Cullens, congratulations on your BEM. I don't know where you fit into the pecking order of aristocracy now with Bev, but yeah, we all are, Councillor Cullens, but well done, and it's a recognition of the work you've done over many years, so congratulations. Do you want to... cushions, and gin and tonic on tap. Okay. Whatever floats your boat. Whatever floats your boat. And on that stage, I will move that we exclude the public and press. So we move to part 2. Will somebody second that, please? And all those in favour, please show.